Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the fifth lecture of this course. The title of this lecture is Criteria of Good Research. While we are pursuing a research, it should be the desire of any researcher that he accomplishes the research in such a way that it fulfills the highest standard of the research. So, how he checks himself or how he does proceed, that the his research fulfills the criteria of a good research or follows the criteria of the highest standard. So, in this connection, the research has to be accomplished, and this is why we are going to discuss the criteria of the good research. All the researchers and research studies must comply or fulfill the common criteria of scientific method research. And if suppose they do not, their research is incomplete and needs to be reworked. Here we shall be discussing some of the important criteria of a good research, which are mentioned below. The purpose of the research should be clearly defined and common concepts should be used. We shall be discussing in future lectures how a research problem is defined and the other aspects of the research. The research procedure employed should be described in full detail so that another research is able to repeat the research for further advancement. We have observed that number one, there has to be replication in the research, that the research has to be replicated again and again. To universality of that research, so the research procedure employed have to be described in detail so that any other researcher who wants to further advance this research and further improve the result can also repeat the research. The research is a continuous process, and in this way it remains dynamic. The research procedure design of the research should be carefully planned so that the results of conclusions are as objective as possible. So, design also we shall be discussing in the lectures which will be coming, which will be given or in this course, later in this course. So, the procedural design of the research has to be carefully planned, because if design is perfect, then the results or conclusions are also going to be objective. And if there are some problem in the design itself, we cannot expect that the remaining steps of the research would be perfect. Some imperfection has to creep in. The researcher should not hide but openly declare with complete frankness the limitations in the procedural design and also estimate their effects on findings. So, if there are and there happens that we have done a lot of effort in the designing of the research process, but still there remains some limitations. So there should not be any hesitation in admitting those limitations in the procedural design, and also how they are going to affect the findings or the whole process. The analysis of collected data should be appropriate as well as sufficient. Data, in fact, in design only, we have to set up how the data would be collected and how they would be analyzed. So, the analysis of the collected data has to be appropriate as well as sufficient. The major instruments utilized for the purpose of analysis should be up to date. The methods of analysis should conform to the latest possible methods as recent as possible. We should remember that. The research is also a dynamic process, and new methods of analysis are coming up. I should mention that there are developments in the both qualitative and quantitative analysis. We did not have software maybe 30-40 years ago, but now we have softwares which handle the data, analysis of the data in both qualitative analysis and the quantitative analysis. So, the researcher must be aware of the latest methods of analysis, whether it is qualitative research or quantitative research, and one has to conform to the latest possible methods as recent as possible. The validity and reliability of data have to be doubly cross checked. The data has to be reliable, it has to be valid, so it has to be checked again and again. Because if somehow the data is not valid and it is not reliable, then it will have its own implications on the conclusion and the analytic results. So, the conclusion should be notable, but should not be confined to those justified by the data of the research. It should be limited to only those conclusions that are supported and justified by the data. We should not include our own views. We should not include our own wishes in the conclusion. The conclusion has to come from the analysis of data, and what data speaks, we have to report in the conclusion. The researcher's experience, reputation, and integrity provide significant confidence and credibility to the research findings. With the experience, the researcher becomes confident, and one has to maintain one's reputation and integrity of research. This gives credibility to our research findings. The qualities of good research is summarized here in the following specific terms. Number one, the systematic criteria. What do we mean by the systematic criteria? Systematic is step by step, and scientific is systematic. So, any problem which is solved step by step is systematic, and which is systematic is scientific. We have many of, rather all of us might have done mathematics or physics or chemistry in our high school or plus 2 or even in the graduation. So, what we observe there, that one has to clearly write each step, and the steps are very important. If somebody writes it without giving the details of the step and comes to the conclusion, it is not valid. It is not considered valid, because every step should be very clear how it has been derived, how it has been arrived. So, the good research has to be systematic. This implies that good research has to be structured with specific steps according to well-defined set of rules. Systematic characteristics of the research prohibits the use of guessing and intuition in reaching the conclusion. So, if the research is systematic, that is step by step, then there are least chances that we can inject our guessing or intuition in reaching the conclusion, because the conclusion cannot be guessed. It is not research. One cannot have intuition in research. See, it is all the result of the analysis of the data. Whether data supports the findings, it's well and good. If the data does not support the findings, it's well and good. So, whatever the data will speak, it would be reported in the conclusion. So, there is no scope of the guessing and intuition in reaching the conclusion. Further, the critical thinking should be promoted. We should not be in the habit of accepting the surface from the knowledge from the surface. No. Whatever is being told to us, whatever is reported to us, we shall not accept it without scrutiny. Every statement, every step has to be scrutinized, and for the researcher, in fact, he has to develop a critical mind. Because what happens on the surface of society is something different from what is happening beneath the inside the society. So what is looking outside? It may have reasons hidden beneath the society. So we have to not to take the things as it is. We have to scrutinize and develop critical thinking for all the steps of the research, for in fact all the statements. So a researcher must have a critical mind, must have a critical thinking, that he should not accept anything without scrutiny. Next is the logical criteria. What is that? The good research is logical. And being logical means that the research follows the rules of logical reasoning, and the logical process of induction and deduction in research is of great help in carrying out research. We shall be discussing these induction, deduction and other methods in future lectures. So, these are logical process of investigation, these are logical process of research. So, if we go through this induction or deduction, it is of great help in carrying out the research process logically. Induction is the process of reasoning from a part to the whole, whereas deduction is the process of reasoning from some premise to a conclusion. The logical reasoning makes research more meaningful in the context of decision making. Now comes the empirical criteria. Good research has to be empirical. It implies that research is related basically to one or more aspects of a real situation. It deals with concrete data. This provides the basis for the validity of research findings. So, the empirical criteria has to be fulfilled for a good research. We cannot have good research without empirical verification. What is happening on the ground and what has happened, that information, that data is to be collected for empirical analysis, and that is going to give us the real picture of the society, of the economy, of the politics, whichever subject we are grappling with. So, along with the systematic criteria and the logical criteria, empirical criteria also has to be fulfilled for a good research. Then comes the capability criteria, that good research has to be replicable. This implies that the findings of the research have to be verified by replicating the study again and again. which provides a sound basis for decisions, theory making, model making, etc. The what is replicability? It is the repeat of the experiment as many times as required. So, what happens? By repeating, we verify the study or the research findings again and again. And for a conclusion of finding to be universal, it has to fulfill the replicability criteria fully. So, if suppose the Keynesian consumption theory or the Newton's law, Archimedes law, any laws which explain the behavioral aspects of the factors responsible for a phenomenon, it has to be replicated again and again. Whether it is social science or whether it is science or it is medical science, replicability criteria has to be fulfilled for the getting the universality of the theory or the model which we want to develop out of our research findings. If somebody claims that he has invented a medicine for diabetes, then that medicine has to be experimented by up 10 times by the researchers so that they can become universally acceptable. And if it is not so, then they cannot be accepted universally. Or any theory in any subject has to be replicable, and the theories which we discuss always in any subject, they have come out only, they have been checked out by many through the replication, and they fulfill the replicability criteria to the best extent. So, the good research has to be replicable. If we say that coaching or special coaching improves the chances of getting success at the competitive examinations, then also we have to replicate the experiment, and then only we can universalize the finding that the coaching or special coaching improves the chances of success at the entrance examination. So that is the replicability criteria which we have to follow. So we have discussed 4 criteria: systematic criteria, logical criteria, empirical criteria, and replicability criteria for our research being a good research. So, whenever we have a chance to pursue research, we must remember these criterions so that our research also is standardized as a good research. Further recommendations for arriving at a good research, what are those? Proper scientific training in the methodology of research should be undertaken. Otherwise, the research findings quite often do not reflect the reality. So, the proper training of the methodology of the research, and this course is in fact one step for achieving that. This course has been designed so that the scientific training in methodology of research is undertaken by those who want to pursue a research career. And if they do not have proper training in methodology, the research findings could often not reflect the reality. Further, there should be sufficient interaction between research departments and industry so that research becomes need oriented. So, the interaction between the research departments and the industry. Industry, university, industry, department, institution interaction is very necessary for the industry knows how, what are the requirements, what are the needs of the industry, and the departments or the universities or the institutions are going to pursue that. If there is no interaction between university and industry, then there would be no synchronized development, and the research may not be need oriented. So, and not only that, the industry would be sufficiently supporting the universities or the institutions in their research programs if they perceive that their issues are being undertaken for research in the universities and institutions and departments. So, we can have this. The revolutions in agriculture, the revolution in dairy, which includes of course in agriculture, the industrial progress, it has all been due to the sufficient research which has come out of the university institution interaction with the industry. So, that has to be taken care of. There is also need for generating the confidence that the data information obtained from the business industry will not be misutilized. That has to be the confidence between the university institution and the industry, because if the data is misutilized, then industry may not come ahead to cooperate with us to support research. Then research problems overlapping one another should be avoided, as it results in wastage of resources and duplication. So we should avoid the repetition of the subject of research. When we select a topic of research, a problem of research, then we have many criteria in which this is also a criteria. Of course, we shall be discussing these in one of the future lectures. So, research problems overlapping one another should be avoided, as it results in wastage of resources and duplication. So, this can be solved by proper compilation and revision of the list of subjects on which the places where the research is going on. There does not exist a code of conduct for researchers. Hence, there is a need for developing a code of conduct for researchers. Research, or we can say the academics, is a noble, gentlemanly profession, and every profession has its own ethics and conduct. So, those who wish to join a research career or an academic career must be aware of the culture and the conduct of this profession. So, this should help them in building their own career. So, there is developing, or there is a need to make the researchers aware of for their code of conduct. Of course, adequate and timely secretarial assistance is necessary. Library management and functioning, of course, is not satisfactory at many places. However, the digitalization of libraries and its resources will help in improvement of the quality of research output. All over the world, including India, we are in the process of, rather many have already digitalized and many are in the process of digitalization of the libraries. It has two benefits. Number one, the researcher is able to access the library from anywhere, even from the remote areas. Otherwise, he has to spend lot of money. And secondly, that it reduces the cost of the library also, because all the libraries all over India, if they are purchasing the same set of publications, then of course they have to spend the money at all the places. But if there is digitalization, so it may help the libraries to give access to the users from anywhere in the country, from any remote areas in the country, and then the researcher has access to the resources, and it helps in improvement of the quality of research output. And it would also resolve the difficulty of timely availability of the published data. So, to say that the criteria of good research we have discussed, and if any of us wishes to join a research career, then of course one has to remember the criteria of good research, so that the research that we conduct and the conclusion that we arrived is supported by as many replications as required, and it becomes a theory. That is the wish of a researcher. And of course, if he wants to or she wants to fulfill these ambitions, he or she has to fulfill the criteria of the good research very honestly. I suppose I have been able to clear the lecture today, and you have gained something about the criteria of good research. With this, I conclude the lecture, and thank you very much.